books. Well, that's how my friend Carlos usually starts out his videos at StoryTube. That's a good channel. Anyway, we're going to be talking about books today. So, yeah, let's do it. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and welcome back to another video where I will be recommending books. Some overlooked books, if you will. As you guys probably know, I have a bit of a reputation of covering overlooked or often underrated books on BookTube, or at least I try to. I do like my fair share of popular things, but I was actually talking with David from Four Corners of a Page, which is a great channel. You should check him out. I was talking with him the other day, and he was like, you know, why don't you make a video about the 10 very overlooked, underrated, I almost said overrated, but underappreciated, overlooked kind of books that I think should get more love on BookTube. And considering I like to go all over the place, here are just some books that I've noticed have kind of gone under the radar on BookTube, and no one really seems to talk about, unless, with exceptions, of course, which I'll go into once I get into the actual picks. I'm sure that there will be people who will have their own picks, and if you do, all I have to say is, if you're mad that I didn't get your pick, either make a video about it, or let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. But, yeah, that's about all I have to say on that before we actually get into this episode of books, 10 books that are not discussed enough on BookTube. So I guess I should stop screwing about and start explaining some of these books. And you might recognize some of these books because I talk about them a lot. So let's just get it out of the way and talk about some of these books. Some of them are series, some of them are standalones. You'll get to them. You'll understand once I get around to recommending them all. So yeah, let's get to it. So, the first book is going to be a trilogy, actually. It is a trilogy I have talked quite a bit about, and it's one where it's kind of odd. I mean, it still is underrated, but there are more people who've been talking about it recently, and that is the Baz Leg trilogy, at least it is so far, by China Miéville. Now, I've talked a lot about this series because I really enjoy the series, and I think it's a hidden gem in the world of fantasy. And it's one that not a lot of people talk about, which is a damn shame, despite its relative critical acclaim. And the fact that Broken Binding and the Folio Society just recently put out new, not copies, but new versions, or not new versions, but new copies. New copies is a good word. But yeah, Perdido Street Station is the first book, but this is a unique series because this isn't really a series like a lot of people are used to in the fantasy sphere. All three stories are technically standalone, though I wouldn't call Iron Council very standalone. It is kind of a sequel to this book in some ways. So I would recommend reading this first before you pick up Iron Council. But all three of these books are mostly standalone for the most part, and all three of them are really good. I think that Baz Leg is one of the most overlooked fantasy settings of all time, and it's become one of my favorites in recent years, up there with Westeros, Middle-earth, and many other fantasy worlds that I've grown to love over the years. But Perdido Street Station is a really great place to start. It's one of my favorite books, though I know some people kind of complain about the messiness of the structure of this book, so if you would like to, you could read The Scar by China Miéville, which is the second book in the Baz Leg trilogy, and is mostly a standalone. There are only one or two references to this very book right here, and it's at the beginning. But all three books are very good, and I think Baz Leg is one of the most unique fantasy worlds of all time. It is definitely up there as one of the most detailed fantasy worlds that I've ever seen. It is up there with Middle-earth in terms of just how meticulously constructed it is, which I know China Miéville might not appreciate that. I mean, I doubt he watches YouTube very much, but I doubt he would appreciate it, but I hope he understands that I'm saying that this world is as meticulously constructed as Middle-earth, just in a different way. It's almost the anti-Middle-earth in a lot of ways, where Middle-earth is this almost, is kind of a nostalgic, pastoral landscape, very rural. This is a very urban series. This is a lot about cities, because China Miéville has a bit of an obsession with fantasy cities. And this is really where it began. Perdido Street Station is really what put Miéville on the map, and as far as many other people are concerned, he hasn't quite topped this, or The Scar for that matter. I don't love Iron Council as much as the first two books, but I do think it is worth a read. I do think there's some great stuff in there. It does kind of teeter a little bit, but, you know, I made a review of it some years ago. I'll link it down below if you guys want to watch my reviews of them. And even the conversation I had with Jimmy Nuts and Amanda from, it's not Shelf Unstable, that's Nick Heel. Shelf Esteem, or no, it is Shelf Unstable. Shelf Esteem is Nick Heel. Sorry, Amanda, if you watch this. I don't know if she will, but yeah. I think that the Baz Lag trilogy is a very underrated gem in the fantasy genre, and I wish more people talked about it. I know that Jimmy has talked about it. I had him on this channel to talk about Perdido Street Station. I was going to have him on for the Scar and Iron Council, but I haven't heard from Jimmy in a while, so maybe someday we'll get it together, but I'm not holding my breath about it. But yeah, I think Baz Lag is well worth the read. It's definitely one of the most unique and boundary-pushing fantasy novels that I've ever read. Fantasy series, I should say. Very unique world. If you're kind of tired of epic fantasy and kind of the tropes, give this puppy a read. You'll definitely enjoy, you'll enjoy the ride, if nothing else. So, yeah, let's put this down. Next book I have is another one I talk a lot about. It's a series, and that is the Dark Star trilogy by Marlon James, starting with Black Leopard, Red Wolf. Though I will say this is a bit of a unique series because all of these books, the pitch really of this series is that it's the same story being told by three different people. Black Leopard, Red Wolf is told from the perspective of a guy called Tracker. Moon Witch Spider King, which is the follow-up to Black Leopard, Red Wolf, is told from the perspective of Sogalon, who does appear in this book. But what's unique about this is that you don't have to read them in any particular order. You could start with Black Leopard, Red Wolf, and never read any of the other books, because it's generally a pretty standalone story for the most part. Though I do think that if you read them in chronological order, you'll get a much deeper appreciation for whichever book do you start with. But you could definitely start with Moon Witch Spider King as well, which I think is much more of a traditional epic fantasy, but told in a very interesting way. What makes this series unique is not necessarily what it does. It does tell a lot of... There is some of the archetypes that you find in the epic fantasy, such as the quest, the hidden king, the whatever. There's a lot of mercenaries going around, but what makes this series unique is how it's told. And I'm actually planning on, I'm hoping to, with my friend Soshi Azu at some point, to make a video discussing how I think this series should be read, because I do think that people bounce off this series because of the fact that it is so unconventional, and it will definitely alienate some people. And I'm not just saying it in the Malazan way, I am being serious. This is not for the faint of heart. There is a lot of graphic violence, sexual violence. There are some scenes in here that will stick with you, that will really just imprint itself in your mind. But I do think that Black Leopard, Red Wolf is a good place to start, but if you guys want to, you definitely could start with Moon Witch Spider King. Now, the weird thing about this series is that it's not technically done yet. There is another one that will still be coming out. I think it's like White Wing Dark Star, if I remember. I'll put it up on when I edit this together. But I do think that this series is worth reading. But what's unique about this is you don't have to read the whole series. You could literally just read one of them, and you know, if you like it, great, you can go on to the other book. Or if you just want to read it, like it, and you don't want to go, if you don't want to read another one, that's fine too. I don't recommend it. I actually think reading the other book is actually makes appreciating the first book that you read. You'll appreciate it a lot more because of the differences in style. And also just how it gives more context to the book. I'll get into it in the video where I discuss these books. And I do hope to put out a video discussing Moon Witch Spider King at some point, because I do think it's a very interesting book. Just as interesting as Black Leopard, Red Wolf, just in a different way, of course. But yeah, you don't have to read all of the series. I would recommend that you read both books, because I do think they're very good if you want to have a deeper appreciation for what came before and gaining some more context over what happened before. Because if you want to follow Tracker's perspective, you're very much getting it from someone who is a grunt, for lack of a better word. Someone who is very deep into it, but doesn't really have high stakes in this. He's kind of the background character, if you will. Now, if you read Moon Witch Spider King, you get a much bigger player in this big story. So, yeah, but yeah, the Dark Star trilogy, I think, is a very underrated piece of fantasy literature, and one that not enough people talk about on FantasyTube. And for reasons I understand, this isn't a series that is for everybody. I mean, read the first couple pages, and if you're not bouncing off of it, I wouldn't be shocked. But if you can saddle through the whole series, I would recommend getting the audiobook for it. I didn't do it because, you know, I was stupid and I just wanted to eyeball read the whole thing. But if you want to read it, get the audiobook. I think it would be very, very helpful to read it while listening to the audiobook. Immersion reading recommended. But yeah, anyway, I've talked about this enough. I said I wasn't going on too long, and it's already too long at this point. But yeah, check the series out. I think it's overlooked. The third book that I'll talk about is one I've also talked about a little bit. This is the last one that I'll really go into, that I've kind of talked to a lot of people about, and that is The Vor by B. Catling. Now, this technically is part of a trilogy. I haven't read the whole trilogy yet, but I would like to finish the trilogy at some point, but there's just a bunch of other damn fantasy out there. This is definitely the most unique fantasy I've read in a while, since maybe American Gods or the previous book that I mentioned, Perdido Street Station. But this is very much a, how do I describe this? Well, how I described it in my review is, imagine if Joseph Conrad tried to write a fantasy, and this is kind of what you will get. But what's the story about for anyone who's interested? Well, there's this big forest that's in the middle of Africa that's called the Vor, and a bunch of people have gone into it, and none of them have come out. It's kind of like Area X in that way, where it's very much this strange eldritch location where people go in, and when they come out, they're not the same. Or, you know, if they don't, or they'll just not come out at all, because in the Vor, most of the people, if I recall correctly, if most of the people who go in, a lot of them don't come out. There are a lot of interesting and colorful characters and situations in this story. My favorite character in this book was a little Cyclops called Ishmael. I thought he was fun. But this is definitely not for everyone. But the evocative prose, the strong atmosphere, and just the pure uniqueness of the world building, I think makes The Vor a very overlooked book. And again, I wish there were more people who talked about it. It's definitely worth a read. Like I said, I do have a review for this, so I'll link it down below if you guys want to read it. This is definitely the weirdest book that I will be recommending today. Well, there's actually another one I'll be recommending that's just as weird as this one. And also, the Bazlag trilogy gets pretty weird too, but this one is easily the strangest. So, yeah, if you're interested in something different, if you're interested in something new, give The Vor a shot. It's a good book. And Alan Moore recommended it. I thought he said it's easily the century's first landmark work of fantasy. And I don't know if I agree with him on that, but I do think this book is worth a look. So, yeah, The Vor. It was a bit shorter than usual. We're going on a good one. So, the next one is actually not a fantasy. I'm going to be taking a break from fantasy for a little bit. And the series I'm going to be talking about, it's another series. This is the last one I'll be doing for a little while. But it is a crime fiction series, and it is called the Kinsey and Gennaro series by Dennis Lehane, which starts with A Drink Before the War. I'm kind of frustrated with how little BookTube talks about Dennis Lehane. I mean, we have started to grow a little bit. I mean, people like Red Fury Books has talked about it. Carlos and Yolanda, the aforementioned Carlos and Yolanda from StoryTube, have talked about Dennis Lehane. They've started this series. They mentioned recently that, or I think Yolanda actually read Darkness Take My Hand recently, which is actually my favorite of the series. But Dennis Lehane, I think, is he is definitely the best crime fiction writer working today that isn't James Ellroy. I really love his style, and I would recommend. It's another thing which is kind of a commonality with a lot of these. You don't have to read many of these series in order, though I would recommend reading this in chronological order because, again, there is a continuity. You don't have to. Dennis Lehane doesn't make a big deal of it, and I think you could read all of them standalone, with the exception of Moonlight Mile. I would recommend reading Gone Baby Gone before Moonlight Mile. But aside from that, I think most of these books are standalone enough, aside from some references in the other books. You could read them all on their own and enjoy them, but I do recommend reading the whole series because I do like the arc that the characters go on, and very unique to a lot of these long-running Private Eye series. This book series actually comes to an end, and a very satisfying one. and it's not very long, because a lot of the PI books take like 30, 40, there's even some that have gone 50 books long. But these are just 6 books. They're not very long to read. I have covered the first 3 books, if I remember correctly. I don't hear this series be talked about enough. I don't know if some of Dennis Lehane's best work, though I do think, though Darkness Take My Hand is my personal favorite Dennis Lehane novel, I do think this is a great introduction to his style. And I did make a video talking about where I would start with Dennis Lehane. This is definitely one of the books that I would recommend starting with, is The Drink Before the War, which is the first of his series. But yeah, Dennis Lehane just does not get the rep that he deserves on BookTube. I mean, his characterization, the way he does characterization, the way he captures voice, the way he captures atmosphere is unrivaled. I mean, genuinely some of the best crime fiction I have ever read. Though I do think that Mystic River is his magnum opus. I can't not say that it's not his magnum opus. But I do think these books have some really great work from Dennis Lehane, and my personal favorites of the series are Darkness Take My Hand and Gone Baby Gone. They're easily the darkest of the all 6 of the books. Though book 5 gets pretty dark too, but books 2 and 4 get super dark, and I really enjoy this series a lot, and I think Dennis Lehane needs more love. And I have a good feeling that he will. We have started slowly gaining some more love for Dennis Lehane. Just recently, the Quiluminati did one of their books. They did Mystic River, and they loved it. I wouldn't recommend starting with Mystic River, though you could start there and have a good time with it. Dennis Lehane is one of those unique writers where you don't have to... there's not like a specific place you can start. You can kind of start anywhere with his work. He's very accessible. Though I did make a video discussing some places I would recommend starting at, so take that what you will. But yes, I do think the Kinsey and Gennaro series is well worth the look, especially books 2 and 4. But I enjoyed this series. I think it's really good, and I think you guys should go read it. So yeah, Drink Before the War. Let's go. Another one was kind of one I kind of wrestled with myself on, because I do like Robert E. Howard, and I do think he is overlooked on BookTube, but a lot of people already know Conan. And as far as I know, Robert E. Howard, as far as I'm concerned, aside from J.R.R. Tolkien, Robert E. Howard is the most influential writer of modern fantasy. I mean, he has influenced everybody who has come since then. And basically invented the genre of sword and sorcery. Basically, there are some other sources you could probably point your finger at, but Robert E. Howard, for me, is the inventor of sword and sorcery. But a lot of people already know who Conan is. If not the books, then they know the movies, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. But I decided to do a little something different. I decided to recommend Solomon Kane, which is actually my favorite Robert E. Howard character. I do think that Conan is a lot better written than Solomon Kane. I do think there are some stories in here that kind of drag a little bit. But I do think these are worth a read. And also, they have Puritans in it. They have warrior Puritans with magic staffs. It's fun. It's just good old-fashioned pulp fun, as Robert E. Howard himself can do it. It doesn't quite have the primal intensity of a Conan, but it does have a lot of gothic atmosphere, strange creatures, and very deeply imaginative and hard-hitting pulp tales, which showcase why Robert E. Howard is the best pulp writer who ever lived. I really enjoy Solomon Kane a lot. This is more of a horror read, so I haven't covered it yet, but maybe, since October is coming pretty soon, maybe I'll cover Solomon Kane at some point. It would be a lot of fun, and barely anyone talks about it, except for that one YouTuber that I dislike immensely, that I will not name. But Michael K. Vaughan also talks about Solomon Kane, too. There's also some other ones, I think, who talk about Solomon Kane as well. So, you know, it's not just that YouTuber. But yeah, Solomon Kane's a lot of fun. If you enjoy horror, if you enjoy gothic horror, if you enjoy historical fiction, hell, even if you enjoyed Sword and Sorcery and Robert E. Howard already, I would be remiss not to recommend Solomon Kane. I do think the best story in this collection is the Right Hand of Doom. That's a very classic horror story in the Edgar Allan Poe kind of manner. Really, really fun stuff. I really enjoyed this book. Not as great as Conan, but does show some of Robert E. Howard's abilities. But yes, Right Hand of Doom, if you're not sold by that story, well, forget it. You're not going to go anywhere. Next book I will be talking about is a science fiction book that I was pushing on people a while back, and it's a very unique science fiction novel, I should say, and that is Light by M. John Harrison, which is a book I covered on this channel and have given to other people to read with varying results. I told my friend Livia from Livia J. Elliott to check it out. She hasn't done it yet, but hopefully soon she'll get to it. This is one of the most unique science fiction novels that I've ever read. It's definitely one of the weirdest science fiction novels I've ever read. If you're a fan of Philip K. Dick like I am, and are obsessed with like paranoid weirdos getting in on this strange sci-fi world, give this book a shot. It's a lot of fun, and it's not very long. It's not as big world building as a lot of other big sci-fi series, and it also just goes into some really bizarre directions with the imagination. With his imagination, M. John Harrison. And he also inspired people like China Mieville and Jeff Vandermeer and even Neil Gaiman, for better or for worse. He's even blurbed right here, so there you go. This is part of a trilogy, but I do think Light can be read on its own. It's very much a standalone, compact story, and I am hoping to read the next book soon. I can't remember the name at the moment, but I'll probably put it up here for those who are curious about it. But I do think Light is a very strong science fiction novel. It's one of the most unique science fiction novels that I've ever read. And I can't see it alienating people with its weirdness, but stick with it. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's put in here. And there's also a couple words in here that might throw you off, but it does make sense as the book goes along. So, yeah, Light is a very good book. I really enjoyed it. Go check out my review that I did a while back. It's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun making that video. And, yeah. Give Light a shot. It's a good book. Next book I have, kind of stepping away from the science fiction fantasy genres again, is a book that I should note before I get into this, that the guy I am happy to call a good friend. And I have been promoting his books, not just because we're friends. I was already reading his books before we became friends. But it does help that he's a good friend of mine, and check him out. I think he's a very talented guy. But that is All Things Left Wild by James Wade. I already talked about this book again on my channel. I've talked about most of these books on my channel, but I'm just kind of doing this as a list to get you guys to go read. But All Things Left Wild is a Western novel, a Western adventure novel in the vein of True Grit. Though, if you're a fan of Cormac McCarthy's style, I will admit the inspiration is a little thick on James's style, and he has admitted this, so I'm not throwing shade on him by saying this. That might alienate some people who are big Cormac fans, but if you want something in that style of Cormac's work, since he has gone into the ether, James Wade is a good place to start. I really like how he does characterization. The characters are really strong in this book. It's very, very balanced in terms of... It is really sad, but it is very balanced in terms of the characters. There are heartwarming moments. There are really sad moments, especially towards the end. My God, James is just brutal towards his protagonists. But this was a really solid yarn. I really enjoyed it last year. It did get on my top 10. I thought it was really, really strong, very engaging, with some really strong themes about guilt and redemption and obsession. You know, all the good stuff that's worth talking about in books. But, you know, James is a good dude, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends. He just is. You can go follow him on Instagram and whatnot. He'll probably talk to you. But he's a good dude, and I really enjoy his style, and I wish more people would read him. I think a lot of the McCarthy fans, I think, would really get a kick out of this guy. I actually just recently read River Sing Out from him, which I thought was a lot of fun. Well, not, a lot of fun is actually a bad term for it. I really enjoyed it, is what I'll say. It's a really good book as well. Though I do like All Things Left Wild a lot more. I thought it was much more emotionally resonant to me, at least for me. It might just be because it's, you know, the first one I read from him. But I really enjoyed this book, and I also recommend River Sing Out as well. But I'll talk a little more about that when I get to what I read in August. So, yeah, All Things Left Wild, solid book, very, very good. I highly recommend it. So, yeah. Next book I don't actually have a copy of this on me, but it's a book from one of my favorite authors, and for my money, the best science fiction writer living today, and that is Jeff Vandermeer. A lot of people, there have been people who have been checking out the Southern Reach trilogy, which has made me glad. I think that's a very overlooked series in and of itself, but it is starting to get a lot more traction on BookTube, which is great because I think it's a great series, and I think people should go read it. Though, if you don't want to read Absolution, you don't have to. I didn't really think it was that good, but go nuts on it if you want to read it. I read it. I actually have it back there. But, you know, it's optional on the Absolution part. But the other 3 books are really damn good. But that's not what I'm talking about today. The book I am talking about today is actually the one that I think is not only my favorite book from him, I even like it even more than the Southern Reach trilogy. And I loved Authority, especially Authority. Authority is amazing. But the book that I will recommend today is my favorite book from him, and also, for my money, one of the best science fiction novels of our century. That is Born. By Jeff Vandermeer. This is I remember when I read this for the first time, I had already liked the Southern Reach trilogy, and I'm like, okay, Born, let's see what it's about. It's a post-apocalyptic book. I love post-apocalyptic books, and I had to give it a crack. I knew I had to read it because Jeff Vandermeer was definitely a writer who I'm definitely picking up his stuff eventually. He's definitely he's not a day one buy, as some people like to say, but he's definitely if I have the option to buy him, I will. And it blew me away. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. It is very much a science fiction novel that is as imaginative in its ideas and the themes that it brings apart, but also just really strong characterization as well, which, you know, Jeff Vandermeer is very good at, combining these very weird, strange ideas with ruminations on the human condition. And we also see this through the titular character, who is kind of this blob. He's described kind of like an anemone, so he's kind of like that. But he's a great character, and it's also... But even though there's this weird blob that's running around that eats things when he feels like it, it's actually a very deeply touching story about motherhood, about being a parent, about growing attached to something, even though they don't quite understand what Born is and what it can do. The character of Rachel, who's the main character and narrator of the story, is actually grows quite attached to this thing, and much of the story is revolved around letting go of of Born, learning what it means to love something unconditionally, and learning that what that also means is that you have to eventually let go. I would love to do a review of Born at some point. It's an amazing book. I think it's Jeff Vandermeer's best. And it's not really talked about as much. There are some people who've talked about it. My friend, well, you know what? We'll say we're friends. Thomas from SFF 180 was talked about it a long time ago. He was actually the one who turned me on to the book, who was like, his review is so good, I'm like, all right, I got to check this out. And I am glad I did. It's a really, really good book, and I think it's the best thing Jeff Vandermeer has done. My personal favorite thing he's done. Some people might say the Southern Reach trilogy is the best thing he's ever done, which I won't contest that. I do think that series is going to be the one he'll be remembered for, if nothing else. But Born, for my money, is my favorite thing that he's ever done. It's a beautiful story, beautiful characterization, and just beautiful, beautiful stuff, especially towards the middle. The middle of that book is just outright flawless. I mean, in my opinion, just the pacing, the characterization, just how he moves the plot forward. Utter brilliance. Not much else to be said. So the 9th book I have on here, kind of retreating from the sci-fi fantasy, but still kind of in that fantastical range, is one from an author who is relatively well-liked on BookTube, but I don't hear this book talked about as much as some of his other ones, and that is The Devil in Silver by Victor Laval. I had wanted to pick this book up for a long time because I really like The Ballad of Black Tom from Victor Laval, and did I read one of his other books? I think I've only read this, and I think I've only read this in Ballad of Black Tom. A lot of people really like The Ballad of Black Tom, but not a lot of people talk about The Devil in Silver, and I think that The Devil in Silver is just as good, if not even better. It's very much a genre buster. It just goes out of its way to hold. It doesn't really stand by one genre. It's a dark fantasy at points. It's a pretty gritty and realistic take on just how bad mental health institutions are in the United States. It's also a horror book. It's but really, really great stuff in here. I really love the characterization in this. The character of Pepper who's the main character of this story, goes through a really interesting journey of kind of coming to peace with himself, because despite the fact that he is relatively sane compared to the other patients who genuinely have mental health problems, also has a brokenness inside of himself that he struggles with on the inside. There's something that's deeply scarred in him that he has to deal with through the duration of The Devil in Silver, and ultimately him kind of hanging out with these mentally ill people causes him, ironically enough, to start gaining an inner peace within himself. I will admit there is a creature in this. You might know what it is because it's on the cover here, but that's not as much of a big thing in this book. What really is the main heart of this novel is the character of Pepper and him trying to figure out how to come to terms with his own life, his own decisions that he's made. And like I said before, some of the own brokenness that is inside of himself. This might be my favorite book from Victor LaValle so far. And I don't know if he'll ever top himself. I know a lot of people like The Ballad of Black Tom. I haven't read read Lone Women yet, which is his newest one, and some of the other ones that he's put out there. I haven't read it. I haven't read his comics yet either. But Devil in Silver is really good, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I think I've done a review for all of these books. Damn. Anyway, really good book. I actually think it's better than The Ballad of Black Tom, and if you like The Ballad of Black Tom, I think you might like this even more. So, yeah, Devil in Silver, great book. Really enjoyed it. It's genuinely just, it's a fantastic book. The last book I'll be talking about is not really a book. It's actually a whole medium that I'll be talking about here, but it's American comics. Yeah, I'm going to be bringing this up. The weeaboos took over the internet, took over BookTube. All the manga people took over BookTube and has everyone reading manga. But I am that guy. If I have to do it by myself, I will lead the charge to bringing American comics to BookTube. All right? Screw manga. Okay, I'm just screwing around. But seriously though, not a lot of people really talk about American comics on BookTube, and it's kind of a shame. With exceptions though, of course. StoryTube, I mentioned earlier, talks about comics from time to time. Talking Story talks about comics from time to time. He just recently put out a video about comics because the new Superman movie came out. My good friend Shay over at Zachary Shay talks about comics from time to time. So I'm not the only one who talks about American comics. But I do wish American comics were talked about more. I mean, yes, I know a lot of people, when they think of American comics, they think of superheroes. But that's not the only thing that we do in the United States. Unfortunately, we had a thing called the Comics Code Authority that basically slapped down a bunch of other genres for being violent and sexual and transgressive, even though if you read some of those comics they were complaining about, they're pretty tame by today's standards. But anyway, they kind of butchered our industry for a while, and superheroes were really the only ones that could kind of do anything because, well, they were generally all ages enough where basically anybody could have enjoyed them. But after that we got rid of the Comics Code, we've been kind of playing catch up ever since. And there have been a lot of good comics that have come after it, like Saga, Deadly Class, Walking Dead, The Fade Out, many other great comics that I could mention. But like I said, I do think American comics are overlooked on BookTube, and it's a damn shame because there are a lot of really great stuff out there, and not just superheroes. Even if you're not into superheroes, there are really good comics that are out there that have nothing to do with superheroes. I have covered some of these books on my channel, so feel free to look around and find some of the recommendations that I've put out there. But there have been a lot of great comics that have been put out there, and there are some comics that I have read that I think FantasyTube would just love, like Saga in particular. Like, I am shocked that Saga has not blown up on BookTube, because most of the people who love like the Robin Hobbs and the Discworlds and the Malza, they would love Saga. Like, if you love the just out there imagination of some of the people like in Discworld, give Saga a shot. I mean, it's not a comedy, but it is a very deeply felt, very deeply loved comic about these two people from warring species who get together, have a kid, and are trying to raise this kid as they're trying to get the hell away from their warring nations. Brilliant stuff. I would love to talk about Saga someday, but it's not done yet, so, you know, when it does finish, I'll make a video about it. But, I mean, there's a lot of other comics. The Sandman is probably the only one that kind of gets respected because, you know, Neil Gaiman is generally respected, even if, you know, recent events have happened. But, American comics, I think there are a lot of great stories that people can go out and read. Not just superheroes. Superheroes are not the only thing that Americans can do. And there are a lot of really great American comics out there that aren't superheroes I think a lot of people would enjoy. Such as, these. I'll do that here. Where's that at? But yes, here. So, yeah. American comics, read them. It's good stuff. And that's really all I have to say about that. Well, that is about all I have to say about that. These are 10 books or series I think are discussed enough on BookTube for one reason or the other. By the way, for legal purposes, I should say I have nothing against manga. Glad manga's having its day on BookTube. There are a couple mangas that I've enjoyed. Nothing wrong with manga. I was just joking. Okay, let's move on. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Not really much else for me to say aside from, well, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And, yeah, let's get to the social media. You can find me on social media. I am on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I'm starting to get the hang of Blue Sky. I don't use it very much. I am starting to get the hang of it. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Comment down below. What are some books that you think are underrated that you think should get more love on YouTube? Recommend some to me. I am kind of the connoisseur of overlooked books on YouTube that isn't like Raft Blue Text, The Library Ladder, StoryTube, or Liam's Lyceum, like, you know, or Owen Edwards, who's also an underrated channel. So there's a couple people who talk about underrated books. But, like, I am a connoisseur for overlooked books. I love talking about them because that's why I started this channel, was to talk about these books that I thought were overlooked. Just what inspired this video. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really have nothing else to say, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And until next time, hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys later. Bye.